privilege for me to be here. I must also say it's a very difficult position to be in, speaking last after everything else has been said. So I am going to try and practicalize everything that we've learned today and hope that we have some learning points to take home. I think I'm actually the only entrepreneur sitting here. And therefore, I will share some of my experience. And more importantly, tell all of us, let us leave this room today to know that we have a culture developed in each of our various associations and organizations and companies on risk management. Now, the biggest challenge I think most of us face is the fact that most entrepreneurs think that risk is majorly for the big companies. But as we've seen today, risk is, from the minute we all decided to become businessmen and women, we chose risk. Nigeria is a country where there is high risk, which means there's also what? High return. And as you heard some of the other CEOs speaking, Lafarge and Co., there's a reason they're here. And yes, they would love to continue to give us those fantastic brands and make houses and sell cement, but the main reason is because they also can remain a profitable business. Now I know that some of the previous speakers said that if something goes wrong, you do what? Blame management. But on the contrary, I hope by the time I finish speaking that you realize that you blame yourself and that everybody in the organization blames him or herself, because we all have a responsibility to identify risk, mitigate risk, and profiteer from risk. Let me set the stage. We're also talking about a country where the same business, because they went on strike, the airports went on strike, you have incurred huge expense, air freighting, over 5 tons of equipment by air, and it lands at our airport, and the customs and the clearing agents go on strike because of small issues, and you have these goods sitting at the airport for 6 weeks. And guess what? That's not the worst part. When they decide to come back from their strike, we have to pay the demurrage. Now, all of this, is this risk that I could have thought about? Or is this the reality of our time? There are many of you in this room that do seasonal business, where Christmas time is a very special time, Valentine's Day is a very special time. Most of those things that you bring in are perishables. Ladies lost their flowers at the airport for Valentine's Day because it was closed. People that imported Christmas cakes and things for hampers lost their goods. They were left out on the sun, and when they got it, Christmas was long gone. These are the realities of what we're talking about here today. So we must have a culture that understands that we're all at risk. As I speak, in the last 2 weeks, I've had 3 major crisis moments. Yesterday, as a clear example, we have what we call a magnet, a cold magnet that came from Japan that has to be cleared in 4 days. It arrived last week, Friday. It came out on Friday, a week later. Then you need to fill this magnet with helium to keep it cold. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. Because of different bureaucracies and other issues to do with ethics, because they knew we were desperate, this helium did not come out on time. Even when you begged and pleaded and paid all the legal fees, there were other people asking for other things, which we refused to pay. And guess what happened? I lost mine yesterday. However, just like Mr. Oshin said, to be able to understand the peculiarities of dealing in a country like ours, you must understand your risks, have a culture of risks, and know how to mitigate these risks. And before I continue with my presentation, let me just tell you that we haven't lost money, because not only did we have marine insurance, but we also did a special offshore insurance worth $7,000, which means every single cost that had to do with the loss of over $500,000 is fully covered. Last 2 weeks ago, we had a project in New York, and I've always looked at people's containers on the side of the road. And you know what I do every time I see them? Let this not happen. As we say in Nigeria, it's not my portion. Let this not pass me by. But my dear friends and fellow entrepreneurs, it's not my portion is not going to save your business. What is going to save your business is having a culture understanding that risks are inherent and that we are in a high-risk environment and we need to learn to mitigate them. Woe betide me, 6 containers left the port. This is after I was supposed to pay a duty of less than 10 million naira, and by the time they computed the duty for modular theatres, I was given a bill of 37 million naira. I have never paid anything like that. Believe you me, it was an ethical dilemma. And you know what? We're always faced with these things every day. And we chose to pay the 37 million. At the end of the day, while it was being cleared, they came back with another bill. I said there's 10 million more to pay. You know, we're in a country where people do take advantage of we entrepreneurs, and for those of us that want to do the right thing. But please, let us know that for every time you do a right thing, somebody above us is watching what we're doing. And do the right thing. And therefore, mitigate it, find a way. You may lose some, but you will win more. And for every time that we have lost a few, we have gained so much more. Sometimes I wonder, God loves JNC. Because you know what, this can't just be ordinary. But let us now look at the theory of how do we make sure that we can really mitigate this risk. And first is understanding what culture is. What is the risk culture? And really, to my mind, I'm not going to go through the details of the slides. It is majorly that the leadership and the employees of an organization understand, with a common purpose, what is risk. Secondly, is to understand that it is not about the MD or the chairman or the board, but everybody in the organization has a responsibility of knowing where the risks come and taking ownership. One thing we pride ourselves as entrepreneurs is that we teach our employees how to be entrepreneurs. And you have to ask your managers, especially, to learn to do, if it were their business, what would they do? And sometimes you find out when it's other people's money, it's a total different decision than when it's your money. And you need to get the rest of your team on the same page as you, and this is what forms a culture. Now this slide is an example of what some cultures look like in some of our organizations. JNC is 10 years old, and they say once an organization reaches 10 years old, you're on smooth sailing. I don't agree. You have just started. You've gone from infancy to puberty. In puberty, all kinds of things can happen. Some of us have had teenagers in the room, not so? Some of us have great teenagers. I pride myself with having 2 phenomenal teenagers. But some of us have had headaches. That's the same thing that happens with our various companies. The difference between the multinationals in this room and us as entrepreneurs is that we were driven by passion. A passion to make a difference, a passion to keep us going. That keeps on going every day. The multinationals have responsibilities to their board and to their shareholders for CAGR, for EBITDA. We do, too. But passion seems to drive us. So for me, I need to surround myself with people that also think like the multinationals. That when I'm going over bubbly and I want to take on too many risks, where my heart pours out and I want to give equipment next to nothing, they remind us, look, madam, we need to be sustainable. So, what am I saying in terms of the culture? It must be a transparent flow of information from top to bottom and bottom up. There are mirrors all around, and we all need to reward when people identify major risks and when people are actually a big source of risks. This rope you see on the screen here is what we go through, not on a yearly basis, but on a daily basis. For us as entrepreneurs, guess what? We are luckier than the multinationals in the room. Why? Because once we see that last thread in our lives, our decision-making process is so fast, we can quickly sellotape it back. They have to go through this bureaucracy and a whole long protocol of speaking to so many layers and then calling Switzerland. Excuse me. Our Switzerland is right in front of our faces. And therefore, we need to be able to make those quick decisions and prevent that tightrope. When we look at the SMEs, we're very important. 97% of the businesses in Nigeria are SMEs. We contribute to over 50% of the workforce. Those are statistics we can't afford to go away. Training is very critical, but there are risks. Let us not fall or slip on the banana peel. And I'm sure that is what we're doing here in this room today. That when those people, processes, government, regulatory framework, whatever it is, whenever it happens, we recognize it and we can get rid of it. If you look at this statistic, I find it very disheartening. That 70% of the SMEs in Nigeria will die before their 5th birthdays. have just moved from infancy to puberty. But to get there, to make sure that we stay sustainable with our growth, we need to look at a few things. Now, what, to my mind, do we need to look at? We need to look at what are the 5 major risks. How can we, through practical examples, mitigate these risks? And at the end of the day, do we have a framework that we can take home to our various establishments? And to go through them quickly, there are 5 risks. First, the financial risks. Second, operational risks. Third, strategic risks. Fourth, hazards and external risks. Now, it sounds like a whole lot of jargon, so I'm going to now break it down and make it easy. We are walking a tightrope every day, but on the end of that tightrope is a pot of honey. Some of us as entrepreneurs will use a cup. Some of us will use a finger. The whole of us would like to carry the honey with a truck. But to do so, we need to have some practical examples of mitigating risks. So I'll first start with the financial risks. We've heard our previous speakers talk about them in detail, but I want to just share a few things that we have done in JNC and continue to do. And it's not a one-stop solution, it's a continuous process. The first is the issue of credit. If I look at my accounts receivables, they are very high. Because we're constantly wanting to sell. Sometimes you throw caution to the wind, you sell without understanding your credit cycle. Business school teaches you that you should do spontaneous financing. That you should make sure your creditors give you on credit and then you almost sell out without any credit terms. It's theory. In practice, it's hard. And therefore, we must keep a very close eye on your finances. If you are not in a position to do so, please employ somebody that can. Get a CFO, get an accountant that helps to set out clear credit policies and implements them. If you have to deviate from it, it's a decision, a collective decision, not a unilateral decision by yourself. The second issue is liquidity. Don't use short-term financing to be financing long-term issues. It is juxtaposing your cash flow. Don't play with your cash flow. The FS risk, I told you, is for real. We have constantly lost money the last year because, well, the last couple of months because of it. However, we've also hedged risk. When we had a major project, we looked and we did our numbers and we went to the bank and we borrowed some money for 3 months, hedged our risks, bought FX at a particular price, and we were happy that, okay, fine, we could price at this price because this is what it's going to do. Sometimes you have to take risks like that and price appropriately, and it has worked for us. The last is the issue of market. Understand your products. I shared with you the issue of the MRI. I shared with you understanding that there are people, your competition is not going to play fair, and there are risks that you're taking. Don't get into a price war and undercut yourself in the name of doing certain things. There will always be cracks, but for us, we must always find a way to get over the crevice. Some of us here do SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. In JNC, we do SWOT analysis. What is the difference? The T on the end is a threat. Threat sounds too negative, so we think of them as challenges as against threats. If you take your various threats to your business, which is every day, and make them your challenges, for every challenge, there's an opportunity. So we need to be able to jump over that crevice and go to the next area. The next is the issue of operational risks. And if I look at human resources here, how many of us here follow up background checks on the people we employ? Yes, when they first come in, they ask for a challenge. I saw one hand raising up, thank you. But when they first come in, most of our employees say, I want a challenge, I want a challenge. When they come in and you give them the challenge, they are hiding under the table. Some people are not, you don't get what you got. We call them pures. Previously unidentified recruitment errors. Well, we've had a few, believe you me. But the issue is that if you do your background checks, you'll be fine. Now, because I'm an entrepreneur does not mean that I must be and always be the sole decision maker in the organization. So you must plan to let your organization, if you think it's something you want to do, if you want your organization to outlive you, then succession planning is something that you really must take as a major risk. If there's a key man risk, and I am a key man risk, I was a key man risk as of 5 years ago. As of today, God forbid something happens to me, there are quite a few people that could run JNC. And we could continue on, and I'm sure you get copies of these slides. But it is important to take every single part of your business and understand that there are solutions. IT risks. I have huge amounts of intellectual property. What if something goes wrong with my building? What would I do? We actually have off-site storage, housed in America. There are cloud solutions that are affordable to keep your data. So your issues. We do something now, every time we have a management meeting called, in business law we call it SPEC, Social Political Environment of Business. Nowadays it's called PESTEL, where you look at your political, you look at your environment, you look at the social status, technology, how does it move and affect your business, and so on and so forth. How do these things affect your business? Because every month in Nigeria, it changes, actually every day, every week. But you can't have this conversation every day. But if you know where you stand, you know where your business is, in relation to the rest of the economy, you're in a better position to identify the risks and mitigate them. Of course, having policies, SOPs are important, but they're only as good as if we actually implement them. We have now realized that we must have a business assurance manager, not an internal auditor, who is going to make sure that people comply with the various processes within organizations. And these are some of the things that we think have really helped to mitigate some of these risks. So the whole issue about a culture is not about Clare, it is not about my second in command, it is about every single one of my employees, my staff, my team. By the way, I don't call them my employees, I call them my team. They are the winning team and they make the company who we are. So please, invest in your people. Training, especially on risk management is important. And I'm sure that the Leap Africa can really work with each of our organizations and help us do a little bit more planning. There's a book outside, buy it. And I'm not canvassing, but I think it's a good idea. So just to try and leave you with something, I'd like to leave you with what I call MIA. And that is that first you identify, I am. Everybody in this room, I'd like you to say, I am going to make a change. I am. Now what is I am? I am is that you're going to leave this room, go back and identify the risks in your various businesses, multinationals and entrepreneurs alike. Then do an assessment. Assessment of how they affect us. What is the likelihood is going to happen and what is the impact? And then you look at the nice parallel that Pedro did, and then you can identify them on the various tracks. And then finally, how do you mitigate them? Now, she mentioned different ways, but this is probably a little bit easier for you to remember as the 14th. You transfer the risk, for example, to your insurance company. You tolerate the risk and face the consequences. You treat the risk and do something about it, control it and understand where you're going, or you terminate it and get rid of it altogether. And the easiest one is to terminate it and get rid of it altogether. Let us be able to see the danger that's ahead of us and not fall into that deep hole, but jump over it. With a quote from Dr. Michael Ong, good risk management fosters vigilance in times of calm and instills discipline in crisis. Let us all understand that some of these companies up on the board here don't exist. Why is that? Texaco got into a huge legal battle and they became bankrupt and they were eventually salvaged and bought over by Chevron Texaco. I mean, you know about the story of Enron and their whole issues to do with Yes, okay, so all those issues, let me not go into the details and crucify anybody else. I purposely did not put Nigerian companies up here because sometimes we don't even have the history of some of those companies that were 5 years of age. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been phenomenal speaking with you. I hope